afternoon. My name is Chris Downs. I'm with Johnson Controls. I'm a business development leader. The program talked about a session 3A being a green energy program, but really that's just a subcomponent. We wanted to talk about ROI-driven decisions about smart city investments in this session. There's a few gentlemen with me here. I appreciate you guys joining me. I'm gonna ask you to start. Reggie, if you don't mind introducing yourself, your mic is right there. It should be live.
Okay, can you hear me? It is live. I'm Reggie Henderson. I'm Vice President, General Manager of Telamon Energy Solutions, and we are a solar developer and general contractor here located in Carmel.
Hi, my name is Jim Shaw with Solential Energy. I'm president and co-owner. We are located here in Carmel. And we are an energy developer focusing on sustainability, green energy, and alternative solutions.
My name is Brad Hinkley. I'm with Inovis Energy, Director of Business Development. We are a turnkey energy services company. We do LED lighting, controls, HVAC, those types of things, and more recently, EV charging.
Thank you, gentlemen. I've invited these gentlemen to join me they're critical partners of ours. We're using them on a lot of different projects that we're implementing across primarily the Midwest. Brad and his group represent an electric vehicle charging network, which is growing business and certainly something that's vital to infrastructure within a community looking forward into what the electric vehicle market is doing. Reggie and Jim are supporting us on renewable energy projects, battery storage, solar arrays. You might have read the press recently, but they just had ribbon cutting a couple weeks ago here on 2 big solar arrays that were implemented by that team of Reggie and Jim's groups. It was about 1.1 megawatts, so it was a pretty big initiative, and I think that's an exciting project that we're trying to replicate. So I want to talk briefly, I'm just going to give you a quick commercial about who we are, but then we want to talk about smart cities and investments in smart cities, what that efficient city looks like, and then some scope potential that falls into this category. I can go to a city leader, a mayor, a city council, and ask for $10 million for smart infrastructure. You're going to have to compete with public works projects and economic development efforts, and you're going to have an uphill battle to sell that message. But I found, and I think most of these gentlemen will agree with me, that if you can go in with a message of a rate of return, almost a self-funding balance sheet of these types of projects where you're not redirecting property tax funds or local income tax funds, you're not setting up a TIF district, it is a standalone entity, that message seems to resonate very, very well. And people like Baker Tilly and others in the accounting industry, I think they're getting more familiar with this model, that they're getting a better level of comfort that this makes a lot of sense. These smart city investments aren't only driving down operating costs, but they're also have ancillary benefits that are in line with economic development, urban revitalization, the resident experience, sustainability practices, connectivity to the underserved. So there's a lot of opportunities to use this model if you think of it as an investment first in a sustainable smart city investment as a second. So real quick, my firm has been serving Indiana since 1896. We are all about efficiency and automation. We have about almost 9,000 patents that are all around energy efficiency. The building automation and control network that's in the Palladium is our product. The energy center that serves this facility is run by our intelligence. So that's just a few examples. Recently, we acquired Tyco, so we brought in about 45,000 employees, but a whole bunch of expertise on fire and security and intelligent buildings that's now under our domain as well. So I just wanted to highlight a few things there about the organization. The $1 Billion Roundtable is firms that spend $1 billion or more a year on women-owned businesses, so we're pretty proud of that. I thought another interesting stat on there is that 90% of the most iconic buildings in the world contain our technology in some shape or form. Started with the thermostat in 1895, but I want to call your attention to the picture on the right. That's our North American campus in Glendale, Wisconsin. It is the only LEED certified platinum campus in the world. So we're really proud of that. We've gone to great extremes to get our energy density way, way down, reusable water, stormwater collection, bike friendly, public transportation friendly, all those things. If you're familiar with LEED, that's a pretty big deal. It's hard to get certification on LEED. It's really hard to get platinum across a whole campus. And you've seen our trucks, you've seen our systems out there, but the group to your left there is my group, and we're dedicated to this results-oriented, ROI-driven solutions around efficiencies, not just limited to energy. Automation and better ways to do things is really what we're driving for. And you'll hear guaranteed savings contracts, public-private partnerships, energy as a service, infrastructure as a service. All those models pertain to this go-to-market strategy of let's start with a financial picture and then drive the other elements of livability and connectivity and sustainability into the projects. Gentlemen, I'm going to pause there. Is there anything you want to add to what I've said so far? No, thank you. So smart cities being efficient cities. Connected, sustainable, livable, marketable. We've seen no better example than here in Carmel. Mayor Brainerd and city leadership they've just endorsed this model of economic development. We're going to build the city with the infrastructure and the bike paths around the Monon in a livable fashion. That's going to be our driver. We're not going to let urban sprawl just naturally occur like anywhere else. We're gonna have this master plan, and it's paid huge dividends. I'm reading more and more. There's a little box there to the bottom right about millennials and what they're looking for when they take a job with an employer. They're looking for that in their community. And if you want to attract talent, and if you want to bring R&D and corporate headquarters and world headquarters to your community, you've got to think about these things, and you've got to think about attracting and retaining that talent. So let's start with a paradigm shift about moving to an ROI-based decisions. I put some trends up here. I'd like your comments on this in a minute, gentlemen, what you're seeing. But the top left is the cost of electricity. I think here it's probably about 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Out west, it's about 20 in Northeast United States. We're doing a lot of work in Hawaii with the DOT there, and it's about 40 cents a kilowatt hour. So driving these investments with an ROI has something to do with your cost of utilities, but that trend is certainly heading up. Right below that is a graph on the cost per watt of solar on a residential application. It is down considerably, and it was probably about $4 a watt was a measurable a few years ago. What do you gentlemen see now on an installed watt on a commercial scale, all in on a solar PV array?
Yeah, obviously looking at a commercial, you look at a megawatt generation, you can be in anywhere from post or pre-pandemic at $1.10 to $1.15 to post-pandemic to $1.35 based on the steel component and panels that are out there in a global market that are being affected. So it's about roughly.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things too, and I know Jim can concur on this, the larger the project, that price goes down even more drastically just with increased economies of scale, such that you could actually get down below $1 depending upon the size and the scope of the project.
Can you comment on the technology and how it's evolving, the density and the efficiency of the panel unit?
Yeah, I mean, you look back 10 years when you had a 72 by 40 inch panel that was out there. It was producing 220 watts. They're hitting 450 watts in that same amount of space. So that's driving. The quality's getting better, the longevity's getting better, the warranty's getting better. Performance warranties are being pushed out to 25 to 30 years. Craftsmanship warranties are being pushed out to 10 plus. The inversion systems are, driving from 95 now about to 97, 98% in loss. So, and then it's just the component of the SCADA or the data acquisition systems that you're pulling that from are getting better and be able to sensor and monitor that much better today.
Looking at the Indianapolis airport, which if you came in from out of state, it's a little over, actually right at about 20 megawatts and 100 acres of land. What Jim was talking about with regards to the efficiencies and also the technology that's gone into that now, to produce that same amount of power, we could probably do it with maybe 70 acres. And then when that project was actually constructed, our firm was one of the partners in that. That cost about $60 million to do today, which was about $3 a watt. If we were doing that today, and Jim and our companies have worked together on numerous projects, but if we were to go after something of that scale today, we could probably get it down into maybe the 90-cent bracket. So therefore, taking a $60 million investment and getting the same back with less land for probably about $18 million.
Impressive. The next graph is natural gas, and I show this because natural gas is a cleaner fuel than the fossil fuel-driven electric. It's not pure and renewable, but it is a better alternative. And we're seeing a lot more around combined heat and power systems. So natural gas is driving CHP projects to generate your own power locally and still have a heat byproduct you can use for heating or process heating or even absorption chillers to get you free air conditioning out of that. And then the last graph there, I wanted to put that up there about the mix of our generation in the country, that it is trending up towards renewables a little bit more. That's making renewable investments in solar in particular even more attractive. So really what we're hearing, the theme that we're hearing back from city leaders is about smart city infrastructure. There's a whole bunch of things that they want to do that would fall under that umbrella. We try to focus on the ones that have a return, and therefore we find an intersection of projects that make a lot of sense. I think I have a quote up there from the mayor from his book about that intersection, basically substantiating that claim. This is a project we're working on right now, and I wanted to show you a pretty simple pro forma. The red bar there, it would be the debt service payment in some shape or form, whether that's bonds or a lease or whether or not that's off balance sheet financing that we've provided and arranged. The blue bar is the return, whether that's through savings, power purchase agreements, whatever credits, renewable credits, whatever it might be. It's not a bad pro forma, and being able to deliver these types of projects make a lot of sense. There's statute around in 49 states that are encouraging these types of investments, so they make it very easy. And in Indiana, this type of an arrangement, it is even considered off balance sheet, so it doesn't affect debt capacity. But the cool thing about that project I just showed you is there's all these ancillary benefits. The session this morning, they talked about a multiplier of every dollar spent in the community and what that does to local trades. This project generates direct, indirect, and induced employment of 473 jobs for the period of about 3 years. It has an economic development impact that you see. There's energy savings. There's a water conservation piece. Then you get into the sustainability impacts, and that's equivalent to offsetting emissions of 40,000 trees, taking 525 vehicles off the roads. These are great numbers, 2.4 2,400 metric tons of carbon dioxide that's eliminated as a result of this project. So these are the byproducts of these investments, sound financials, but has these ancillary benefits that are so desirable for smart cities. Okay, so there's really generally about 6 categories that we look at when we're analyzing opportunities within a municipal space, and it's energy resiliency, buildings and facilities, vertical assets, meaning municipal-owned streetlights, fleet, utilities, and even public safety. So the energy resiliency is the big one a lot of us think about on solar and renewables and efficient self-generation of power. The top right there is a 1 megawatt battery storage unit that my organization manufactures. We engineer these and provide these and install these and maintain these, but it's an important element of solar arrays to have that ability to carry you through when the sun's not shining, when you don't have that self-generation to be able to handle loads. We're really getting to a microgrid solution where our clients are energy independent. We saw what happened in Texas with the grid. We've got a lot more utilities that are thinking about, we need to be an island. We need to be able to self-generate. How are we going to get there? There's a lot of utilities, Carmel's one of them, that have methane as a byproduct of their anaerobic digester process at their wastewater treatment plant. Harvesting that methane and doing something very green and valuable with it is all of a sudden that market is going through the roof. It's a great opportunity. The credits that are available for that are going through the roof. It's an exciting time if you've got that type of process. Gentlemen, I might ask you to comment, especially Reggie and Jim, on the value of the battery storage contribution and what that can do for communities and why solar becomes even more attractive when you're able to have the flexibility around storing some of that energy and using it when you need to.
Go ahead.
Well, I go back to one of your trend lines. You talked about cost of kilowatt hour, but there's also a cost of the power component of that, the kW. So you have both a lot of times in an industrial customer. So, when solar is working inside that solar window, it's great when it's off cast and putting that back and offsetting that. But when those power spikes or demand spikes are outside of that solar window, now you couple both together. And then that can be a cost benefit ROI return when you do that. And then I guess the second thing would be that battery allows to, to smooth the grid or the algorithm of the grid to how you're putting that back on, in traditionally how solar works. So.
I completely agree. Batteries play a critical role, particularly, like as Jim said, as far as that transition, because when you look at, in the summer, for example, when you have a beautiful sunny day, everything's great, you're producing all this energy, and all of a sudden, particularly around July, August, you get a pop-up thunderstorm. And then what happens is clouds come in and automatically the amount of production takes a nosedive. That creates sort of a buckle in the system with regards to what's going on, and being able to have that battery system there, it provides that seamless transition such that the grid doesn't have this hiccup when it's trying to actually transition from one form to the other. The other is, of course, to Chris's point with regards to Texas, being able to have that type of reserve energy is amazing, and it will actually provide a lot of safety and a lot of buffer if for some reason there is a natural disaster. And then also I'd like for my colleague to perhaps share a little bit about on the EV side, because particularly as we see EVs becoming more pronounced, there'll be the opportunity to actually pull energy out of the vehicle back into the home as well to actually create another barrier of safety as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of that, not necessarily in the consumer-driven car, but more like fleet vehicles, vans, big buses, trucks that have massive batteries. They can be hooked to the grid, and it's easier and cheaper to charge them overnight, and while they sit on a charger during the day, they can provide energy back to the grid. Absolutely.
Thank you. The picture there on the bottom right is one of the first solar floating arrays. We just commissioned that a few months ago in Walden, Colorado. It's kind of a cool thing at a water treatment plant using that space. We're also doing studies on that array now that has to do with the algae and the chemistry. It's much improved now, and we're trying to figure out a way to quantify that benefit. So the next category would be buildings and facilities. This is where most of us think about when we're thinking about energy efficiency, or even in our homes, HVAC systems and your thermostat and building controls. And there's so much evolution in these technologies that make this a very attractive investment on CO2 sensors, intelligent lighting, daylight harvesting. There's just a lot going on. LEDs have come way down in price. So there's always a great opportunity in street lights and space as well. There's an energy center that serves this facility. It's a very highly efficient Carmel Energy Center. They rate chillers in kW per ton. I think 0.9 used to be kind of the standard, and it's about 0.5 now on these high efficiency plants that have optimization involved. And you're also dealing with getting rid of these pretty bad refrigerants. So it's a win-win on the sustainability message. The picture there on the top right is a public kiosk. We're getting a lot more interest in these public kiosks where people can actually go up and see how the city's performing or how the building is performing. Those are being expanded. I know in Carmel they're doing a lot of work looking at wayfinding and what's the wait time at Anthony's Steakhouse, and what's on the agenda at the Palladium this weekend. And there's just all this public information that's flowing into these green kiosks, but you can also augment that with how the city's performing on their sustainability charter as well, and pull all that information in real time. The bottom right there is the Empire State Building. We were involved in that. It was a 35% reduction to get them LEED Gold certified. This goes back maybe 5 years or so, but it was a pretty cool project to be part of. The next one is streetlights, and we don't think that much about streetlights, but now they're really gaining traction as a vertical asset that can have a lot of different functions beyond just street lighting. Obviously, LED conversions on these streetlights is a winning message, but control of those street lights, being able to dim, being able to set different schedules, maybe even alternate. If there's a parade or something, you can set programs to flash them or do something else. We've got places that have color options on these, so you can have the downtown lit up pink on Breast Cancer Awareness Day or St. Patrick's Day or whatever it might be. Pretty cool what can be done with streetlights and the nodes and the intelligence that are behind those that can do things like gunshot detection sensors and pedestrian counters. Those type of things are all available with these smart and connected streetlights. Fleet is another one, a category we see a lot of opportunities for investments. One that may not be apparent to everybody. It depends on where you live and where you're from. There's still a lot of trash collection that's manual. So you've got 2 people hanging off the back of a truck and a guy driving the truck. Very inefficient. The automated systems are so much better. There's also workman comp issues. There's needles getting poked. There's back problems. There's also the aesthetics of trash that's not in a toter. I don't know if any of you still have that in your homes or not, or but it's definitely an opportunity to automate the process. The truck there is the Carmel fleet. They have converted many of their fleet to hydrogen fuel cells under an experimental project. I think Purdue University is involved with that research as well. They're getting like 30% improved efficiency by using that technology. It's very cool, and the city needs to be recognized for some of the things that they're doing. The bottom right there is Mayor Ballard from Indianapolis a few years back. He signed an executive order. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Marines, if you recall, but he spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and when he got back, he wanted to get off of oil, petroleum-based products. So he went to an executive order 6 that was going to green the entire fleet. We worked with him very closely on that effort for 100 trash trucks and 100 snow plows moving to CNG. The economics were terrible. They didn't drive very many miles. The conversions were a little bit more expensive than we wanted. We didn't end up being part of that project, but they did execute the electric vehicle charging share program. I don't know how well that went. I think it ran into a lot of different obstacles along the way. One of the big ones being they were taking up prime real estate in front of a lot of business establishments, and they were taking a lot of heat from that. So if you're from Indianapolis, you probably remember the Blue Indy program. I know they're looking at other options to that as well right now. We talked a little bit about renewable natural gas. Imagine a scenario where your municipal fleet is fed off of your own renewable natural gas that you generate yourself at the wastewater treatment plant. Very cool stuff, and that's gaining huge traction. Johnson Controls, by the way, is a top 50 green fleet. So we've gone through this with our own fleet of about 5,000 vehicles. Telematics is a big deal. Tracking, I know there's some people that are opposed to the Big Brother, and I get that. But tracking your vehicles in your cities, how fast are your drivers going? Are they diverting way out of the city to have lunch? What's their braking patterns look like, and that kind of thing. I think the insurance companies are getting pretty on board with telematics anyway. And then electric vehicle and EV charging networks. We've got to think about what's going on with 500,000 Teslas rolling off the lines this year alone. I believe there's about 30 new EVs on their way this year. And within 5 years, that's going to be like 150. Getting that infrastructure in place for now and then having it future ready for what's going to happen down the road is key. They've got metrics, Brad, and you can elaborate on this. I know there's metrics for a ratio of, say, a parking garage or a municipal surface lot. What percentages of those do you typically recommend are ready for EV?
Today, we're typically suggesting, when it comes to municipal policy, to focus on at least 10% of parking spaces have EV charging in them now, and then we also call it future-proofing for at least another 10%. So the goal is to have 20% of your parking spaces ready to have EV charging at them over the next couple of years.
Yeah, so the parking garage at Tarkington has got like 300 or 400 spaces. So that's a pretty big commitment, but it's also a big opportunity and getting ahead of the market as well. You might talk a little bit about the technology, because I think a lot of cities that I've worked with have some reservations about, God, I got to build this thing. I'm getting a lot of static from my constituents that we've been giving away power. I'm tired of giving away a free service to the people that are rolling in $100,000 Teslas, right? So I think, Brad, if you don't mind, can you talk a little bit about the billing, some of the options that are available for handling the administration of that, the apps and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the conversation here started around the idea that things are going to have an ROI and they're going to pay for themselves. And in my world, when I'm working with ESCOs such as JCI, the question becomes is how do the chargers pay for themselves? Most chargers are networked. That's the kind of the standard direction that the market's going. That allows us to do a couple of things on top of charging for the use of those chargers. Collecting the data is obviously a big deal as we move forward. We want to understand what's working, what's not working, those types of things. But really the consumer mindset, I think when Tesla first started producing vehicles, all charging was free, no matter where the charge was coming from, whether it was Tesla, municipal chargers, private chargers, that type of thing. The mindset of the consumer in the EV world is definitely shifting now, and the expectation is that if you're going to plug into a charger, you're going to pay for that electricity outside of maybe some retail locations that are benefiting from the dwell time.
And that the cool thing, Brad represents ChargePoint, which is the biggest electric vehicle charging network, I believe, in the country, if I'm not mistaken, with like 80% of the market. We've teamed up with ChargePoint. We've used ChargePoint at our corporate headquarters and all of our plants. We love the product and the technology. I believe the app and the ease of use that I can be in Carmel and say what's available, and it sends me to the Arts District, to the lot there, and there's 5 spaces that are available. I get a ping when my car's charged a couple hours later that it's fully charged. I click on the button and it bills my credit card. That's pretty easy to me, that I think we've really knocked down a lot of the barriers. There's different levels of charging. The level 1 was kind of the older one. I think that's probably what you find in garages at 120 volts. It takes a long time. Level 2 is kind of the standard now, and it's a lot faster, but it takes some infrastructure. I think that's a 240 volt connection. And then you hear a lot about the fast charge through the level 3 DC charging. Brad, do you want to comment briefly on what you're seeing? That's a big investment on the level 3. I know a lot of people want that for the quick use, but that's a pretty big investment if you're looking at multiple locations like a city of Carmel.
Yeah, absolutely. The infrastructure needed for level 3 or direct current fast charging is very extensive, very costly. The expectation long term is that we will probably see, and the rates are really match this today, is 70% of public charging would likely be level 2, and 30% would end up being fast charging. The way that we like to explain it is level 2 is more of a local kind of amenity, something you're going to see at municipal parking lots, you're going to see in parking garages, retail locations, and I actually like to call it the cell phone model. So you typically are at home, you plug your cell phone in. If you're at work, you plug your cell phone in, and wherever you have a chance, you're having your cell phone charged. You're never really letting it go all the way to dead, if possible, right? So level 2 charging, that's really the mindset. That's kind of what we're looking at for that type of charging. And then fast charging really is something that we're installing along, we like to call corridors, major expressways, travel routes, things of that nature, where you have people not close to their home, maybe business travelers, fleets, things of that nature, where they're going to need a quick 20-30% charge to finish their trip.
Thank you. If I could take a break for a second, when this was first opened, they used to have this symphony for kids. I don't know if they still do that on Saturdays. It was the coolest thing. I brought my daughter, and we always sat right over there in the corner, and she was 5 or 6, and she'd wear a dress and crawl around and get down into these coves, and it was just a blast. I'm standing here looking out. Some of you have seen any shows here. It's an amazing facility. I saw Elvis Costello here, and I've seen some other shows, but it's just the coolest place. But I can't help but picturing my daughter crawling around right over there. Utilities are the big energy spend, the big spend for municipalities that own their own utilities. So we've seen great opportunities for investments that have guaranteed return around utility metering, water meters, electric meter, gas meters. There's a lot of communities still going out, sending out trucks, and they're reading these manually. It's labor intensive, it's prone for errors, and you're exposing your workforce to going into backyards and dog bites and meth labs or whatever they might be exposed to. So the automation of that process, where all that information is picked up on a network, provides a much better service for your constituents, but it's much, much more efficient. You can use those resources better somewhere else. The picture there is Evansville. That's a smart utility app, which users can pay their bill. They can see what's going on. If they're in Florida, they can see that their irrigation kicked on at 5 a.m. in Carmel, and they can feel good about that. It also encourages conservation. Seeing that information and having that data encourages conservation. A big trend towards cloud-based storage. Utilities have a lot of data, so having a third party manage that for them is becoming a growing trend as well. Leak detection sensor networks are for the water distribution systems because they spend a lot of money to prepare to treat that water and get it into the pipes and get it to the users, but they lose a certain percentage of that. Sometimes it's on a good city, it's 5 or 10%, and then a poor system that's got a lot of I and other problems, it's they may be losing 20+% of the finished water product. So putting in a network that tracks that has acoustic sensors that can tell you where the problems are and help operations go identify those issues is something that's valuable and can save a lot of money and save a lot of our natural resources in the process as well. Certainly process improvements. There's a lot of heavy machinery in these water treatment and wastewater treatment plants. Then there's obviously the self-generation of power. There's a lot of space on these facilities. They build the sewer plants, maybe not in Carmel, but anywhere else, it's out in the middle of nowhere. They want it away from communities. There's a lot of land usually available, which is great news for the solar people. There's a lot of land, there's a lot of space, and there's a load there. They need the power. They can use it on their side of the meter, which is the best economic model that you can get. So there's a big trend towards renewables, solar. Augment that with battery storage. You can get your entire wastewater treatment system essentially off the grid. Cool stuff going on. I added this category. It's public safety. It's really leveraging some of the other investments, but smarter information to drive public safety around IP cameras and data analytics and license plate reader technologies to know who's coming and going and flagging people that maybe shouldn't be here, might have a warrant or something like that. The parking space availability at a parking garage. People do not want to be driving around looking for a parking space, and I think the city would agree. We want people moving. We want them to get them to their destination. So having information about what's available is kind of key. We're working with a lot of airports now in the Midwest. That's a big deal to them. They get dinged on customer satisfaction because somebody's running late to the airport. They had to spend 3 minutes looking for a parking space in the garage or something, but they get dinged on their customer satisfaction. So we're helping them automate that and come up with more cost-effective ways to route people. That sounds like an easy thing, but the option right now, if you've seen them, is like a red or a green dot light on a sensor on every single spot. That could be $10 million for a parking facility. So we're coming up with better ways that use cameras and track that movement of traffic. Okay, I wanted to show you a real quick scenario of this kind of modeling. This is from one of our projects, but this is kind of the length of detail we get into, or that the industry would get into on there's like 200 things for this particular project, but I'm showing you about 20, so it would fit on the screen. We go through the exercise. That little X on the left is an indicator of whether that's in the project or out. So we go through a lot of different scenarios of what makes sense, what doesn't. To the right there, what you don't see is greenhouse gas impacts, local jobs created, that kind of thing. There's some other fields that you don't quite see on that. This allows our clients to make decisions and play different scenarios and get that simple payback or the net present value or the ROI that they're looking for by doing a bunch of different things. Okay, I wanted to quickly, before we wrap up, talk about a couple case studies, Carmel being one of them. This is a project in Evansville. Last year it won our 2019 Project of the Year by the Indiana Energy Services Coalition. It was interesting that the driver on this project was connectivity. They rated at the bottom 3 of 300 cities on broadband adaptability. The driver was the CIO and the mayor, Weinzapfel at the time, saying, I gotta get municipal Wi-Fi and I gotta get municipal fiber out there. We came to them with a way to pay for that and fund it through the utility as the backbone of our communication that we needed for the utility system anyway. And that was the big driver for this project. It saves about $3.1 million a year. They were able to get a whole bunch of stuff done. There was no rate increases or TIF funds that had to be redirected. The neat thing is, first of its kind, we're taking fats, oils, and grease from all the restaurants and universities down there, and we're injecting it into the wastewater treatment to make more methane. We're using that methane to make free power. So about half of the wastewater treatment plant, which is about a megawatt in total, is being served by their own self-generated power. They also get revenue for taking that fog. They get about 8 cents a gallon, 10 cents a gallon, and there's 30,000 gallons a week. So they've got revenue coming in. They're dealing with a problem of this fog that ends up in sewer lines and causes all kinds of problems on municipal infrastructure. And they're generating their own power and becoming independent and offsetting about $350,000 a year of power that they would have been buying from Duke Energy. So it's a great project. The cool thing about it is we use local trades. We used mostly all local pipe fitters on that scope of work. We put a lot of people to work for about a 3-year period. And then the environmental impacts were something that the mayor and the city leaders are very excited about. 14,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide is eliminated through this project. Louisville is another one, pretty vanilla. We went in about 2 million square feet and did lighting, some building controls, HVAC stuff. They have 7 parking garages. We converted all those to LED, but they got a lot of infrastructure taken care of as a result of the project. We had a lot of diversity content, 33% on the first phase and 24% on the second phase. We kept all the dollars almost exclusively in the community. They've won a lot of awards. That's Maria Cutter, who was the Director of Sustainability at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. a few years ago, being recognized for this novel approach to the challenges of our grid and our generation mix. Fascinating project to be part of. The picture there of the Aquatic Center has heat pumps. It has a solar thermal system that's heating that pool year round for free. It also has automated covers. So we put these covers on, it's like a garage door opener, and they cover up the pool. They keep the chemicals in, they keep the energy in. They're very, very efficient to do that. And then Carmel. Carmel is just a fascinating place. They're doing some great things that a lot of us, maybe we don't hear quite enough about. For instance, they've got a geothermal system at the water treatment plant. That's the first one I've come across in the Midwest. Do you guys do any geothermal kind of stuff, or have you done any installations around that? Okay. The economics of geothermal when gas went from $12 a decatherm at the Henry Hub at the wellhead to $1.60, the economics of some things really suffered. Unfortunately, good and bad, but for geothermal, that made it very difficult. So there's been a kind of a reprieve on installation of geothermal. They've done a lot here on efficiency of buildings. The Energy Center is a highly, highly efficient facility. They've already done fleet conversions they had Republic do CNG on all their fleet as a condition of their partnership, and then hydrogen fuel cells on a lot of the fleet here. Very impressive. They just commissioned about 1.1 megawatt of solar last month, which is certainly should be commended. There's a picture there of the mayor, and I think that would be Telamon. That's Bruce Breeden from Telamon there, second from the right in the picture. But the cool thing is there's also a lot of projects that are being discussed and that are in planning here in Carmel that could make Carmel the prototype of smart city investments across beyond just like solar, microgrid, battery storage to augment, really even get the water treatment plant essentially off the grid. The electric vehicle charging network, I think, is something that the city's very interested in. And I think ChargePoint is a great partner to do that. There's a solar array out at 131st in Shelburne. That's a big ground-mounted array that's in the planning stages. And then we're looking at 2 more canopy arrays at parking facilities on the roof. awesome stuff. They use an anaerobic digester process, so the renewable natural gas is a very good candidate here in Carmel. The Energy Center is something that we're looking at optimization. They're continuing to add new buildings and new facilities, so this loop is getting taxed from that utility center. So we are supporting them in that endeavor as well. They've got streetlights that are LED. They're very efficient, but what they don't have is any communication to those. It's so important when Carmel hosts events that the aesthetics of the city is so important that they will drive or walk the 2,000 or so streetlights that they own. They want to make sure their city is reflected properly. They want to know if anything's out. They don't want to wait for a phone call 3 or 4 days later from a citizen that the street light has been out in front of my house. They want to know it in real time. So connecting those, getting feedback instantly that you've got an outage, having the ability to schedule or dim or whatever you might have to do is something that I know that Carmel's looking at. Internet of Things devices is another opportunity here. We've provided some consulting on things like smart trash sensors that say, don't come pick up trash at this location because this bin is only partially full. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you multiply that across hundreds of facilities, it is a big deal. As you notice, there's a lot of roundabouts with incredible landscaping and vegetation, very impressive, and it requires a lot of irrigation. So smart irrigation sensors that keep track of humidity, weather forecasts, what's going on in the soil conditions. That's a big opportunity to do something with stop overwatering and start having that intelligence to drive those decisions. So I just had a couple more slides here to wrap things up. ESG, I can't read the papers or pick anything up without reading about the environmental, social diversity and governance programs that are going on. This is a big deal. I just saw something, the Citigroup is not funding anybody that's involved in petroleum, fossil fuel industries. This is a big deal. How you're scoring on this, it's not a score, it's a risk factor. And it's driving investors away, and it's driving capital away. How you score on this is a big deal. I've got a list there of the bottom left there is kind of how we did last year and what our goals are around our performance around reduction in waste, reduction in greenhouse gas, those kind of things. But this is a whole field in and of itself. Maybe Reggie or Jim, I know you guys have dealt with this and are pretty close to the market on this. What's your thoughts about ESG, the scoring, the risk, how it's driving the cost of money up? How some banks are staying away if you don't meet these types of scoring criteria. It's very, very interesting.
It is, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it continues. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons why this is, a set of factors that people are looking at, and I think it makes everyone very much aware. And if nothing else, it actually drives one to create strategies and sustainability goals and that sort of thing to improve. There is an amazing amount of awareness right now with regards to the environment and sustainability. So in some regards, you could look at it and you could say it's a little aggressive. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it's a move in the right direction, and hopefully it will smooth out a little bit, because right now it does have an effect on pricing.
Yeah, all I would say is it's regional pockets, but eventually, we have the coast. We're here in the Midwest. Eventually, it'll get through and it'll play through for that momentum and look and study and I think things will calm down eventually. But the importance is elevating. So.
Yeah, and I might add, if it's not intuitive, a lot of these smart city projects drive these ESG goals. They drive this scoring in a favorable direction, and that was kind of the point of this, especially the environmental section on there. A lot of those get improved through renewables, through microgrid solutions, through conservation efforts, through water management practices. And that was kind of the conclusion of the presentation here today. I really appreciate all your time, and let's open it up. I think we've got a little bit of time before the next session. Anything from me or the panel? Yes, sir.
I have a question. Since you've been talking to conference about how cities can catalyze mixed-use development, smart development, and general private sector and public, how do you go about managing ROIs and development costs in something like a parking garage that's going to incorporate EV charging, it's going to be a public-private partnership? How does the return work? And what's the payment mechanism on the retail customer side?
So I'll start with the payment mechanism. It's similar to any other app, Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, that type of stuff. Your credit card would be loaded into the app when you pull up to the charger, and it's specific to the network for that charger. You essentially plug your car in, you will complete and pay for that session right on your app. As far as private partnerships, we do quite a bit of that. It really depends on the type of charging. With level 2 charging, there really isn't a ton of income for the private investor. So typically there's not really, it's really an amenity for the city to have to offer to the community. If there are locations where we can do fast charging, there's definitely some room in there potentially as we move forward and EV adoption picks up. That's really negotiated on a case-by-case basis depending on where we're at, what state we're in, are we in a big city or a smaller city, that type of stuff. So it really is dependent on the situation.
And are you seeing developers put that in when they're doing public-private partnerships in the city? You see developers putting in parking garages or in retail locations?
Really both. It's so new. We're just in such the infancy stage of this EV thing. It's everybody's just trying to kind of get the pieces figured out, but we are starting to see traction from the public sector, like policy support and things like you're talking about.
What we've been able to do in our projects is set a rate schedule on the billing so it's break even. It handles administrative, service, maintenance, O&M on the equipment. We're just trying to create a model that is break even for the city, so it's not being subsidized, and the city can recover their investment as well. So that's fluid. That's going to change based on where you are and rates and everything else. But that's another example of part of that green kiosk. I think that would be the type of information that would be good to have at your fingertips if you're at Midtown Plaza and you're looking for what's available or, what's the status of my vehicle or that kind of thing. Yes, sir.
So cities have a lot of decisions to make on, where they're going to invest their limited resources. How does a city get started? You had mentioned Evansville, you mentioned Louisville. How do they choose those projects? And I know, for example, the city where I live, we got a lot of things we're working on. We're not sure where's the best ROI. What do you do first?
Right. Councilman, appreciate your attendance. The message that the paradigm shift has been, look, I could come to you as a city leader and say, hey, we'd like $10 million for a bunch of these projects. They're smart and they make your community more marketable and they're sustainable, and we're going to compete with sidewalks and infrastructure and some other things. If I come to you with a business case that says, hey, this debt service is going to be covered by the benefit every year, and we can even have it off balance sheet so your debt capacity isn't affected, then it's a standalone, almost like it's got its own LLC. This little project is its own little entity that's going to break even at worst. So that is the message that we seem that resonates with the market. And as long as we can return that break-even point Typically, we see more projects that are bundled into the solution, things that they couldn't get funded, that don't have a great return, but as a collective, as a cohesive pro forma, it all looks pretty good. So that's typically what we're seeing, Councilman.
Do cities ever come to you and say, hey, look at all of our challenges, and what should we be putting first? And is there like maybe an audit that Johnson Controls does on a municipality that says, okay, if you address these issues?
Yes, exactly. So, and I'm sure these gentlemen, they've got tools that are available and modeling tools, and they do this kind of work as well. But absolutely, we lay those out, and typically a city can select. We would look at everything across, everything that's being spent, every dime that's being spent on these systems, and come up with scenarios and best practices and modern technology and connectivity that's going to drive improvements. Then there would be a menu of these 100 things that we came back with, and you could play scenarios with what makes sense, what should be my priority, what's the biggest bang for the buck, what's going to improve my marketing, my economic development in the process. I want certification because I think that's important, so I want Energy Star or LEED certification. I want to be able to brand City Hall as LEED certified. So there's a lot of different drivers. We look for grants, we look for investors as well, and that kind of thing. So yes, it's kind of fluid, but there is a process of going through and figuring out where the priorities are. We like the message to be, though, that what we've seen has been successful is cities have a myriad of issues and challenges every day. We have a privilege of focus in these types of projects and scopes of work. So let us do what we do and bring best-in-class solutions and best practices, and you do what you do best in running the city. So that's kind of the message that we typically, seems to resonate. Yes, sir.
I'm curious whether you see the current energy distribution companies, Broad, becoming a leader in this transition or not?
Jim, maybe I'll throw that over to you.
That's a great question. One we get a lot. And you can look at it from the perspective of cost. And I think the pandemic allowed us, as a commercial entity, a muni, whomever you are, to look back at what our raw costs are and how do we reduce that, which allows you to look at how you're billed and tiered and structured from an energy unit to a power unit and how that works. So some of the trends that we talked about earlier, where the energy numbers were going up, if you're an energy-only customer, some of the tariffs and policies that are going throughout the U.S. are restructuring to where it's starting to get lower on those energy numbers, but then your power number is a lot higher based on what type of user or tariff that you're involved in. So it's a model that you navigate around, which allows us to look at solar incorporation, battery storage, EV charging, things that we can handle, isolation of the grid in a microgrid scenario and creating power for yourself as an entity. So there's challenges there, but there's definitely ways around that because the whole grid itself and harmonics and frequency regulation, things are getting much better today, especially with energy storage and other things that are involved. So I'll answer it that way, that able to navigate around those. We build on both sides of the meter, so appreciate that question.
One other thing that's really interesting too is that when you look at the utilities, they are actually creating cost increase in one arena and then opportunity and growth of sustainability in another. When we were looking at the graph and showing the increase of cost for the cost of energy, what that has done for our business in the solar arena has actually made solar start to pencil. Years ago, it was sort of a hard argument to actually try to sell someone on a solar proposition because of the cost. Now the economics are such that the delta between the cost of buying energy and making energy yourself is actually large enough that the ROI and the IRR is actually very, very attractive these days. And of course, the fact that as the utilities themselves are actually building more and more solar arrays, the manufacturers of the panels and the racking and the inverters, their cost per unit's going down. So, for Jim and I to quote a project today that we may have quoted the same project 3 years ago, the cost is significantly cheaper and we're still able to maintain margin.
So where's the third party, the political realm, going to play in this? The obstacle for many who have advocated for renewable energy for a long time has been that the ROI doesn't work. Now we're saying the ROI is working. So the business community is going to suddenly get involved leading this. The third arm piece of the stool, obviously, is that political environment that has been resistant to some, it ebbs and flows with changes. Are we going to be able to keep them up? Are they going to be able to be convinced that it's real now and really get on board and not be an obstacle?
In some regards, they are engaged with the extension of the ITC, the investment tax credit, which was supposed to be 22% this year. It was extended to 26% for another 2 years, and then it will start to trickle down. There's talk that may go back up to 30%. And in many cases, years ago, where the utilities were fighting against the ITC because it incentivized the private sector to actually invest in solar, and it was actually fueling this new industry of renegades like Jim and myself who are quote unquote, perhaps eating up market share of the investor-owned utilities. Now what it's doing is that the utilities are saying, hey, we want to extend that ITC as well because now we're actually shutting down coal plants and converting to renewable energy, and we want to take advantage of those incentives as well. So everything is about timing, and with that regards to how much contributions are being made to political action campaigns and so forth, depending upon who is in favor of said policy, politicians will, sometimes take a little test of the winds and will adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and it's just like ESG, right? When you're looking at this, it's a regional base, it's state by state, it's a territory. If we're sitting here talking in California, there's a whole different concept about what solar is and battery is and how the grid operates and outage and, versus if we're, here in Indiana talking about it. So, I think that regional viewpoint and look is structurally a stronghold, and until we can kind of look across all aspects of power, of natural gas and what's left of coal and then into renewables, you might see more of that, ironing out throughout, if you will, from coast to coast. So.
Yeah, let me give you another quick example. Citizens Gas serves Carmel and so does Vectren. In the past, they didn't really care about our renewable gas. Them taking it is key to taking advantage of the renewable credits. To take it, you had to get to a major transportation pipeline. I think you had to get it at 3,500 PSI or some unbelievable number. You had big infrastructure costs. They did everything they could not to take our renewable gas in essence. The landscape has changed drastically, 180 degrees. They're pressured by their constituents to have a percentage of their portfolio being renewable. So they are very easy to work with now, and they're taking this gas, in the case of Carmel, at a service line at 28 PSI, which is very easy to get to. They're making it very, very easy. So it's really changed. There's a couple examples. So I'm hopeful that the political forces at work will stay behind the sustainability message as well. Anything else? Well, I appreciate your time very much. Have a good afternoon. Hope you enjoy the conference. See some of you at dinner.